Hello and welcome to Switzerland and to this edition of Health. This bus, parked in the centre of Geneva, is open every evening for drug users to come and exchange their dirty needles for clean new ones. It is in fact part of a wider circle of centres supported by the Swiss government, where drug addicts can go and satisfy their cravings, all the while avoiding the risk of an overdose or indeed infection. We're going to be looking at that system in this edition, as researchers here make a discovery that could determine why and how some people are more vulnerable to addiction than others. Indeed, addictions that cost Europe a whopping 57 billion euros every year. And you'll see that it's not just chemical substances that are to blame. Games can also seriously lose their fun and become a definite problem. Finally, we'll be going to the UK and you'll see that a legal drug there is causing controversy. Well, we're now just up the road from that bus and in the neighbourhood that until a few years ago was known as one of the main areas drug users went to buy their fix. It's also here that you'll find the Association Première Ligne, a centre that welcomes drug users and tries to help them with their problem of addiction, ensuring that they use clean needles and avoid an overdose. We'll be going inside in just a few minutes, but first let's hear from one of the researchers at the University of Geneva. There they've made a recent discovery of how the brain recovers or reacts after repeated exposure to cocaine.
When you give a single dose of cocaine, you have an increase in the communication between two nerve cells that lasts usually for about 5 days. And then the brain somehow comes back. And the mechanism by which the brain restores normal transmission, that's what we have identified. So the hope that we have is that by identifying the molecular basis of this mechanism, that we could maybe look at the genes in people who are particularly vulnerable for addiction, and maybe in these people then the mechanism would be different and less efficient.
Well, let's now go inside this welcome and injection centre. Open for 8 years already, it's well known in the city. Its goal is to reduce the risks that drug users take and to offer them somewhere to talk, indeed some psychological support. Frederick gets the injection and sniff room ready, a space for drug users to come and take the products they buy elsewhere in a clean and secure environment, and where they can get advice on how to avoid infections and keep their bodies as healthy as possible.
It's also about helping them inject. By that I mean we don't give the injections, but we explain how to find a vein, how a vein isn't necessarily visible and has to be pumped. The idea is to help them avoid wrecking their arms.
On average, 100 people come to this centre every day. When addicts arrive, they first check in, giving back any dirty needles they have in exchange for new ones. The staff quickly check their condition and then give them a ticket for the injection room. It's not yet 2 o'clock and this young girl is going in for her 3rd injection. She comes here on a daily basis.
If we shoot up outside, we can annoy locals or passers-by, and with kids about and that, I much prefer to come here. What's more, I think the people who come here must have the cleanest hands in the whole of Geneva. We're disinfected 2 or 3 times. It's well organised.
Reducing the risks to drug addicts is the main goal of the centre. Here, if users are in trouble, staff are there to help and give a call to the emergency services if needed, something that happens almost once a week. Jean-Claude knows these difficult times well. He gave up heroin 2 years ago and now works at the centre.
Here, if you have the least problem, there is someone there who is trained and able to help. When I was consuming, it allowed me to survive in the best conditions.
The goal of the centre is not to get addicts to give up, but it does try to restore people's dignity and self-confidence.
We're not going to be the reason that people give up drugs. We can encourage them or stimulate them, but fundamentally it's up to the individual to decide. But what we see is that we have a lot of people, and the first task is to restore their feelings of self-worth.
A number of users at the centre go out collecting any discarded needles left lying around. It's a job that makes them feel worthwhile and helps to keep the centre on good terms with locals. 74% of the city's residents voted in favour of state-run drug schemes last year. It doesn't have to be a chemical substance in order for the brain to get addicted. An addiction to games is getting more and more attention in France. Staff are now trained to spot a client in trouble. There are leaflets with helplines passed out in casinos, and there are even psychologists giving sessions around slot machines.
Last year, some 30 million people tried their luck at least once. But it's thought there are around 1 million people in France alone with a serious addiction to gambling.
My husband's gambling addiction destroyed us.
In 15 years of marriage to an addict, Yolande didn't notice a thing. Her husband refused to let her see any bank statements, but then he decided to confess.
He said the game was like a beast that was devouring him, that was eating him from the inside out.
Thierry's been playing for 15 years. He's known both the highs of winning and the despair of loss. For him, more than anything, it's like a drug.
But you're really drawn into the game, and you just can't give it up.
For the first time ever in France, a psychologist is observing the crowd and looking for high-risk players.
If you want to try that, we can give you 8 visits a month, and you can have them when you want.
For a psychologist in a casino, giving gamblers a sympathetic ear while not demonizing the game is no easy task.
I mean, clearly I feel a little alone. Where can I send people who are having difficulties? I need something outside the casino for support. Therapy, care, help with debt.
There's little support for gambling addicts in France since authorities don't see it as a public health problem, but there is cause for worry. The first legal French gambling websites are going live in January next year, and specialists are worried that addictive behaviour could get worse.
And from being addicted to casino games to playing Russian roulette with your life. At least that's how a coroner in the UK has described experimenting with the legal drug GBL. An industrial solvent, it's becoming increasingly popular in the party scene. Last August, the government announced plans to ban it, but their moves come too late for some, including 21-year-old medical student Hester Stewart.
Strict searches at the entrance to a new nightclub in London. Staff are on the lookout for traditional illegal drugs, but also dangerous legal substances like GBL. Similar to ecstasy, clubbers use GBL to get high and stay up all night. Many users believe it's non-addictive and has few bad side effects. Not so, says Marianne Stewart, whose 21-year-old daughter Hester died in April after she mixed a small amount of GBL with alcohol.
Everybody needs to understand that this is not safe and that they must think before they do it. No one wants to stop young people having fun, but it's a life sentence. And that's what I have to live with now, and that's what the person has to live with who gave Hester GBL.
Marianne is now campaigning hard to have GBL banned.
If she had thought that there was something toxic in the substance that she took, she would have thought twice about it. If it was a classified drug, that would put a different complexion on it.
GBL is a common solvent used in a range of products like nail varnish and cleaning products. It's relatively inexpensive and easily available in Britain on the internet. Doctors here say the number of patients addicted to GBL has increased by as much as 500% in the last 6 years. Most don't realise how dangerous it can be.
GBL will cause unconsciousness, cardiac depression, reduced respiration, loss of cough reflex and seizures.
The government is now planning to ban GBL for human consumption, a move that might ensure that clubbers will be able to keep on dancing for a long time to come.
And finally, with a ban on the treatment for internet addiction, it's time for something strange but true. China has banned electroshock therapy as a means for treating internet addiction. The move comes after a controversial case of a doctor in the Shandong province who administered the method to over 3,000 teenagers for the cost of around €600 a month. Indeed, China has one of the world's largest internet populations, and the government there has been campaigning for some time to get people to use it that bit less, saying that family time was suffering and indeed teenagers' studies. Well, that's where we're going to have to leave it for this edition. You can rewatch this show on our internet site, france24.com. Just make sure you don't get addicted and you join us for a new edition next week.